If you wake up before sunrise, whatever you do not get out of bed. Don't even move. It will be watching. However strong the urge is to use the bathroom, no matter how strong your thirst, it will have to wait until you see the first break of dawn. Try your best to go back to sleep. This way, it cannot hurt you. You may think this is just another scary story to give you your cheap thrills, but that is simply not the case. What I warn you of is 100% true. I should know, as I have experienced it firsthand, and I don't want anyone else making the same mistake I did. I'm a fairly light sleeper, and am often woken up by the slightest noise. However, I cannot sleep in complete silence, so I often leave my television on as I sleep for comfort, albeit at a low volume. One night, I was awoken by my television. I had obviously forgotten to turn down the volume before I went to sleep, so I reached for my remote and set it to a more suitable level. I then turned back over to check the clock before I went back to sleep. 3:46 a.m. Thankfully, I still had over 3 hours before I had to be up for school. My gaze then slowly drifted from the direction of my clock downwards to the floor by my bed as I rested my head back on the pillow. And that was when I saw it, just out the corner of my eye. It was only there for a second before I blinked and it was gone, but I was sure of what I saw. A pair of glowing eyes staring directly at me from the darkest corner of my room. At first, I dismissed what I'd seen and chalked it up to the fact that I'd been up until midnight reading creepypastas and so was probably overthinking. However, I could not dismiss it the second time, as when I opened my eyes again, the pair of eyes were now accompanied by a grinning set of white teeth. I was paralysed by fear, unable to do anything but stare at the face in the corner of my room. I don't know how long I was sat there, locked in a gaze with that thing, but the next thing I remember, I was snapped out of my trance-like state as light came flooding in through gaps in my curtains, and all of a sudden, the face was gone. Immediately, I jumped out of bed and ran over to the corner where the face had been, half expecting to be dragged down into the abyss or mauled to death by whatever was back there. But to both my surprise and relief, there was nothing. For a while, I tried to rationalise the situation as a bad case of sleep paralysis, but this theory fell short, as each night I awoke before sunrise, I was met with the same piercing glare and wide grin haunting me from the corner of my room. I feel as if it was trying to coax me towards it and lure me in to fulfill whatever malicious intentions it had for me. I knew that it couldn't hurt me if I didn't move from my bed. But this is why I'm writing this to you. I messed up, and I know my days are numbered. The night before last, I had my friend over to stay, and we were up until the early hours, watching horror films and playing video games. We had both been drinking a lot of soda, so naturally we needed to use the bathroom. I hadn't told my friend about my experience with the face in the corner of my room, as I'm sure he wouldn't believe me. I, however, still didn't want to risk it. So, at around 2 a.m, my friend got up to use the bathroom. I tried to make up the excuse that he'd wake up my parents, but he promised to be quiet, and with that, he got out of his sleeping bag and made his way to the door. I was shaking in fear and anticipation, but, to my surprise, nothing happened. He made it to and from the bathroom unscathed. This is when I made the biggest mistake of my life to date. After seeing that nothing had happened to my friend, I pushed my fear to the back of my mind and went to use the bathroom as well. I almost felt stupid when nothing happened, and I was somewhat embarrassed to have been scared of nothing for so long. This relief did not last long, however, as when I awoke last night, I could have sworn the face was closer to my bed than it had been before. I don't know how long it'll be until it gets me, but I know I don't want to find out what happens when it does. Don't worry about me though, there's nothing you can do. The purpose of this story is for you to take my advice and to not make the same mistake I did. So remember, if you wake up before sunrise, do not get out of bed.